let's jump into it, so folks. So before we get into it, just a quick antitrust slide that GS1 competition law caution. GS1 operates in strict compliance with EU and national competition and antitrust laws. Compliance with competition and antitrust laws is always and has always been the policy of GS1 Ireland. And this means there should be no discussion of prices, allocation of customers, products, boycotts, refusals to deal, or market share. If any participant believes the group is drifting towards an impermissible discussion, the topic shall be withdrawn until the opinion of counsel can be obtained. There's more information in the link below there in terms of the full competition law if you want to look at that afterwards, and we will be sharing the slides. And just a quick privacy and IP disclaimer. This session will be recorded in order to be able to share it with the participants and some people who are obviously on annual leave and whatnot at this time of year. And by participating, you're authorizing GS1 to process the input that you share for the realization of the work group. So basically, if you take part, you will be recorded, and that will be then shared with whoever is on the work group and anyone who wants to access the video. The agenda for today, we just have a quick slide on some feedback from the last call. And then we're going to look at how data is actually encoded and scanned using an intelligent barcode. I have a colleague then from GS1 Global Office who would be our overarching overseer within GS1 and who kind of, I suppose, provide insights from a global perspective and also standardization from a global perspective so that everyone across the globe can operate with one voice in terms of supply chain standards. And he'll be talking through digital link. There'll be a quick session on that in terms of what is the digital link, why should you be looking at this, what can it do in terms of the various use cases, and looking then at what it's actually being used for at the moment as well, some actual use cases that are actually happening around the globe. And then we'll look at intelligent barcode implementation considerations for stakeholders, so for the likes of retailers or for manufacturers, distributors as well. What do you need to think about if you're implementing these? What are the steps that you should be taking? And we'll talk then about next steps as well. And what we'll do after each of these major sessions or sections, we'll take any questions that you have as well. So if you do have questions, do pop them in the chat box, or if there's anything else as well, you should be able to unmute yourself as well, I do believe. But we can get to that when we get to the question stage. So some survey feedback from our last call. One of the questions was, do you have a specific area of interest in mind ahead of this call? And what we got back from retailers was that traceability, recall, and stock visibility or inventory management are the core areas that they would like to focus on. And stock management, inventory management would also bring in the likes of food waste as well in there. Supplier interests were around traceability as well. Also recall and also stock visibility and inventory management, but also consumer interaction, which hopefully Phil can provide some insights into today with the digital link, and that should be interesting. And also then order management and asset management as well. So we'll touch on all of these topics throughout the next few slides. And if there are any questions as well, do reach out to us directly. My email is at the end of the slides, so you can contact us that way as well. So just to start off, intelligent barcodes, we kind of spoke last week about what they are, the benefits and whatnot, but encoding data in an intelligent barcode, what data is encoded? So first, let's look at encoding the data. What types of information could be encoded? Why would this information be encoded? How is the data encoded as per GS1 standards? And what happens when the data is actually scanned in as well? So what data can be encoded? So you could have batch numbers. So for traceability, you could have batch numbers, serial numbers. The GTIN is your product identifier that's currently encoded in barcodes. You could have coupon numbers, you could have item counts. So the amount of products or items in a case or on a pallet, expiry dates, use by dates, best before dates, dimensions, weights, measurements, internal company information, SKUs even. So any reference numbers, basically any information that you can think that might be aligned with a product, we more than likely have a way of storing that, that data. And then, so before you go using an intelligent barcode or trying to encode information, you first have to figure out what level of identification you need. So the more granular the product data, I suppose, the more granular you go, the more complicated it gets. So you'll see here on this slide, the GTIN is what we use at the moment in terms of identification. That identifies a product family across all, let's say, a consumer unit. It just identifies all of that consumer unit. If you look then at a batch level, so if you want to go down into more granularity, you have groups of trade items which are similar, or the usage characteristics such as production batches or the expiry dates. You can then go at a batch level to identify, and that's very helpful with traceability, with recall and the likes like that, and even stock management as well when you're looking at dates and food waste. And then you have, down to a more granular level, you have serial numbers. So you could have a GTIN plus a serial number, which would be more for high value items, but it is possible to put serial numbers on any type of an item. And we see this across the pharmaceutical and the medical device industry, where you have serialized individual point of sale products, such as medications, being serialized and then traceable down to that individual pack. So GS1 application identifiers, and I'll ask people to use the chat box here if you can. This is a system that we use to push, I suppose, logic or reason behind numbers that are stored in a barcode. But this next slide is actually gonna, I suppose it's a few questions for yourselves in terms of the number that's in front of you at the moment. Does anyone know what that number is at the moment, or can anyone put into the chat box what they think it is? We're hearing a product code. It could be a product code. It's a bit short for a GTIN, but it might be some SKU code maybe, potentially. Anyone else have any thoughts on that? What if I was to do this? We're hearing serial numbers as well. It could be a serial number as well, but it's hard to tell on the last slide because there was no way of identifying a use for that number. In this case, we can see that it's a telephone number because there's a symbol aligned with that. In this case, we can see that it's an amount of money in euros. I can tell you for sure it's not my wage, but the application identifier of the euro symbol does indeed tell us that it is a quantity of money. And if we do it this way, it's a distance. So it's 406,300 kilometers. A little bit of trivia, that's actually the distance between the Earth and the Moon at one of its cycles, one of its, I suppose, as the Moon moves around us. But the point of these slides is to show that a number on its own without any context is no good, and a system cannot scan that. It can scan it, but it doesn't know how to interpret or how to manage that data. And I guess that's what GS1 identifiers are there to do. So what is an application identifier? First of all, it's 2 or more digits that provides a standard meaning for the data encoded. And application identifiers, they're used extensively worldwide and reliably interpreted as well. So that could be the likes of a GTIN, expiry dates, lot numbers. AIs or application identifiers allow distinct data to be encoded in the same barcode symbol, which is what an intelligent barcode does. It encodes multiple bits of information, not just a GTIN or a product identifier. On the right, you'll see some examples popping up. So 01 would be the GTIN, or 00 would be the SSCC for pallets. 02 could be a GTIN contained within a case or within a pallet as well. 10 would be the batch or the lot number, which would be very important for recall, traceability. Best before dates then are 15. 17 is expiry dates. 20 is product variant. 21 is serial number, and 37 is count. That would be the count of the items contained within an item. I would say like a case or a pallet again. But all of these allow you to get more visibility, more granularity on what you're actually scanning, and help capture and utilize that information on your systems then. So there's a various amount of use cases for application identifiers. It could be item identification, traceability, numbers, dates, trade quantities or measures. So you could have weights or dimensions as well, logistical measures as well, specific to logistics, references and location numbers as well. You could have delivery locations or production locations, storage locations, specific and internal applications as well. So SKU numbers would be an example of that. And there's a full list of the application identifiers through that link as well for anyone who is interested. But I suppose that's the use cases of application identifiers. So various different uses, various different information that we can actually encode in a barcode. And the next question is then, how is it actually scanned? How does the barcode actually work then? So the first, what you're seeing here in front of you is a GS1 data matrix, and there are 4 pieces of information or 4 application identifiers encoded in this. And can anyone hazard a guess what any of that information is, what those application identifiers in brackets mean? You can use the chat box again. So 01 is the GTIN 14, that's correct, yeah, it's a 14-digit GTIN. Serial number is there as well, yeah, and we'll see now as we work through the process as well, how they're, I suppose, parsed, interpreted, and stored in systems then as well. So the first step is to scan the 2D data matrix, the symbol itself with the actual scanner, and what the firmware will do then is it will take a string of data, and the second step then is it will decode that string of data as per ISO and GS1 system rules. So there's function ones and various other things included in there that allow the scanner firmware or the software that's built into the scanner to actually interpret that. And what it does is it actually parses that information into the relevant parts. So 01 is a GTIN, it's 14 digits, and it would parse that out. 17 is the expiry date, and it will parse out year, month, day afterwards then, and that's as per GS1 rules. And then you have 10, which is the lot number, and 21, which is indeed the serial number. That's the process for decoding the data as per the GS1 application identifier rules. And then the next step is that the scanner will actually pass the information to the ERP system. And the way that you see it when a barcode is scanned is this information is automatically populated into the fields. But that's kind of the logic, the breakdown of what happens in actually interpreting the barcode, pulling the various bits of information out. Now that's a quick snapshot. There's a lot more happens in between in terms of technicalities, but hopefully that's helpful for you in understanding it. The last slide showed us a GS1 data matrix with data encoded in the traditional GS1 sense. And what we see in front of us here is a GS1 Digital Link URI, which you'll notice that there's 01, there's 10, there's 21, and there's even 17 as well. So you have the GTIN, the lot number, the serial number, and the expiry date as well that are encoded. But this is a slightly different format, and it's called the Digital Link URI. And this is what my colleague Phil is here to answer some questions about. And so we'll be handing over to Phil in a minute, and he can kind of fill you in a little bit more detail on that, pardon the pun. So any questions, first of all, guys, on what we've covered there, or what we've looked at? Has it sparked any inquiries, interests, or whatnot? And if not, if you have anything that you're thinking on or you want to raise with me afterwards as well, we can do that at a later point as well, via email perhaps. Okay, I'm not seeing anything coming in. So what we'll do is, Phil, are you there?
I am indeed.
Let me just.
Of course, I've changed my slides since I sent them to you.
That's perfect. I can make you I'll make you the host so that you can share your screen, and then if you make me the host. Okay, so you should be the host then, Phil.
Okay, but you do. Right. No, actually, let's do that one and do that, and then that. We should be ready to go. Okay, presumably that's okay.
Yeah, you're on full screen.
Right.
There, so perfect.
Morning, everyone. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everyone at GS1 Ireland for inviting me here today. Apologies to people I'm looking at who's here. I know some people here know a lot of this stuff inside out, so forgive me if I'm repeating old news. But for new people I haven't met before, I spend most of my life talking about this stuff, and I come at it from different ways depending on who I'm asked to talk to. This is not a technical deep dive at all. It is trying to give you the business angle and to dovetail into what Tim was just saying. So these basic questions around digital link, you know, what is it? Why do I care? And those things. And what can I do with it? And I'll try and answer those questions if I can. And I'll begin by going back to the Library of Alexandria. I mean, why wouldn't you? So I'm just going to turn off my camera because I have very limited bandwidth here. Thank you, British Telecom. Go back to the Library of Alexandria. So, you know, 300 years before the Common Era, and people are looking up information by going to a source and hunting it out and then sitting down and trying to analyze it. And that basic way of finding information persists, certainly persists until about a decade ago. This is only, what is it, 13 years old, this picture, and people are still going to where the information is, looking something up, studying it to find what they want. And in 2007, this thing came along. It's not the beginning of the story, it's not the end of the story, but it does epitomize the story of the development of information technology in our lifetimes, which puts information in our hands. There isn't a question you can think of that has a factual answer to which you can't find the answer. There isn't a single thing I can ask you that if I give you a minute to look it up, you wouldn't be able to give me an answer to. And because of that, the expectation of everybody, myself included, is if I want to know something, just tell me, because I know you've got it. I don't want to have to go to a library to look something up and find a book and then look it up in the index and read the stuff. Just tell me the information. And that's something we all do every day now. We expect to be able to get that information. And this presents, as everybody in the industry here knows only too well, this presents a huge challenge to industry to answer that demand. And it's a demand born of the times we live in, and you are expected to be able to provide any information about your product, because if you don't provide me with that information, I'm not going to buy it. And because we are surrounded by digital noise of one kind or another, my wife's phone pings all the time with different WhatsApp groups she's in, and goodness knows what, it's pinging all day long. No one wants to talk to me, but she gets loads of things. And within that digital noise that surrounds us, if you're trying to sell something, it's hard to be heard. You need to actually really stand out and to make an effort to gain the attention that you want if you are trying to sell something. People have been trying to address this need for a long time. Here's an example of a product on a shelf, as well as the barcode that would be used at point of sale. There's a QR code that you can have a look at. And if you scan that, you'll get more information about this thing, because what's on the label only gives you the basics. And before you buy something, particularly a purchase where you would consider different options and come to and you're choosing, particularly for higher value items, you want to get that information before you make that choice. You can't put it on the label, so here it is, a QR code, scan that, and you'll get that information. But the way people, brands and information suppliers use QR codes is not always very intelligent. This is the back of a taxi in Korea, and you, the user, are expected to know whether you have an Android phone or an iOS phone, and depending which phone you have, you're expected to choose one QR code or the other. If you go to Kansas and you want to enjoy some Jack Steak barbecue, you, the user, are supposed to choose which one of those 4 QR codes you're going to have a look at on your phone, because that gives you a different QR code for different locations. A friend of mine sent me an example the other day of a picture of a product that had 3 QR codes on it. One went to the homepage of the brand owner, one went to a product information page about the thing, and a 3rd QR code on the pack went to a video about using it. You see this a lot. You see multiple codes, and every code you see is there to do one thing. And every time the brand owner or the retailer or whoever it may be, the healthcare provider wants to supply a different kind of information, they tend to put a different code on there. This is ridiculous, and we have to stop it. Can we stop doing that? Because every time you make a request to the web, whether you're using a phone or a laptop, or it doesn't matter what it is, whatever you're using, you know, the web server knows what you're using. Have a look at your own website stats. You can tell how many people visit your website using an iPhone compared with an Android. You know what language they speak. You know their IP address. You know, therefore, roughly where they are. You know what time of day. You know when there's more traffic and less traffic to your site. And if, assuming you use cookies, you'll have an idea whether they've been there before. If they're logged in, you'll know exactly who they are and all sorts of information about them. All that information is transmitted to the web server every time you make a request to the web. So it can't be rocket science to use that information that comes in with every request to your web server and use that information to provide customized, personalized information back to the person making the request, whether that's a business partner, a regulator, a clinician, a patient, a consumer. So GS1 Digital Link is about achieving that goal, starting with one code and using the intelligence that is built into this enormously complicated thing called the web, using that incredible facility that we have access to provide intelligent answers to the questions we're given. So in the apparel sector, here are different sizes and colors. In the food sector, here are nutrition and allergy information. Here are the recipes. Here are the exciting things you can do with it. Oh, here's a bunch of good-looking people eating my dish somewhere. Purchasing information and product recalls, traceability. Those are the key things. That's what Digital Link is about. It's not about technology. It's about exactly the issues that Tim had on the screen earlier on, the ones that you've raised. Traceability is a really important one. You're linking from the thing in front of you. Where did it come from? Was it created according to my values, whatever those values may be? I want to know, because if you don't tell me, because I'm not going to buy it, because I can look this up. I can find this information. And either you give it to me as the brand owner, in which case, okay, that's that communication channel. If not, I'm going to get it from somewhere else. And if I can't find it, I'm not going to buy your thing. And wouldn't it be good if, as well as doing all that, as well as providing a route through which you can communicate with your business partners, your patients, your regulators, your consumers, if it could also go beep at the checkout? This picture is 2 years old now. This is my friend and colleague, Steve Keddy, holding up a pack that we did a demo with in June 2019. That's the scanner there is a Datalogic Magellan scanner. to modify that scanner so that it can read a data matrix, and it can read a regular 1D barcode, and it can read a digital link URI, whatever kind of carrier that's in. To modify that scanner took Data Logic 30 minutes, because the software to do it is we make available, and it's easy and it's free and it's dead easy to do. So we're talking here about an intelligent barcode that can do a lot more than just go beep with the checkout. It can also provide the kind of extra information you want, and it can link to other things as well. So those basic questions about what GS1 Digital Link is. It is barcodes and it's the web together. Use the power of the web plus the power of higher capacity barcodes to provide information you need at all the points through the chain, and information that can come from elsewhere. And we've done it, we're doing it, you're interested in it because you know that your business partners and your consumers are demanding it, because that's the world we live in. Of course you can answer any question. That's the way it is. And what can you do with it? Well, you can make that single barcode do a lot more for you. It makes it more useful. Now, Tim's already shown this, so I don't need to belabor this point. But the way we do this is the fundamental aspect of GS1 Digital Link, is it takes those things like the GTIN, the serial number, the GLN, the global location number, the serialized shipping container code, the global individual asset identifier, any of the GS1 keys that we have in any combination can be included in a URL like this. Notice that on this one, which is a fully conformant GS1 Digital Link URL, this is on the brand owner's domain name. There is no need, please don't use a single domain name for this. Use the brand name. So if you follow this link, where do you go? You go to the brand, in this case, Del Giardino. It goes to your system, if you have one, which almost every company does, and you get to decide what happens there. You get to decide what information is available and how you're going to handle it, and point off to different sources of information wherever it is, and you don't have to aggregate that data or pay somebody else to aggregate it, because you've got this way of pointing people to wherever the data may be. It handles batch numbers, it handles serial numbers, and all the different things that we have. So that, what the digital link URI does is to specify exactly how to put those identifiers and their values into a string, which means that if this were in a QR code or a data matrix or something at the point of sale, you do not have to look it up online to find that information, because the GTIN is right there, just the same way it is if you follow the other syntax which Tim was talking about. You don't have to use an online lookup to extract the GS1 identifiers from a GS1 Digital Link URI. That's really important, because it means that your operations that you have today that use existing GS1 systems still work. And you haven't got to make an online lookup. Oh, hang on, I can't process your order because the internet's down, or my website's crashed, or Amazon Web Services has fallen over, whatever it may be. You don't need those. That isn't going to happen, because those bits of information are still there in the string, which is also something you can look up online. Now, there's a whole load more to this, which I'm not going to get into because I've got a limited time today. There's a video about this. I'll send you the link at the end. It takes you through the different layers and how the full GS1 Digital Link system comes together. And of course, I'm happy to discuss that more in detail. Tim asked me to talk about who else is using this. So I'll give you a couple of examples of this. This is our colleagues at GS1 Switzerland. They operate a product catalog online. They effectively put a GS1 Digital Link front end on that. So you can access that product information. Consumers can access that information just following the digital link syntax in the URI there. GS1 Hong Kong have done the same thing. They again have a product catalog. They do lots of marketing services for their members there. So the same thing, there's a digital link front end on a service that already existed. I think on a previous call, you looked at this one. This is an example in Brazil, where a product has the current UPC EAN barcode. Of course, that's not going to disappear overnight, as well as a digital link QR code. which can do all the things we talked about. Also in Brazil, looking at, again, I think you've seen this one before, tracing, traceability, seedlings from nursery to being planted in forest. Another traceability example, this is with our friends at Origin Trail. If traceability is your thing, you've probably come across Origin Trail. This is a proof of concept they did with a chicken producer in Slovenia. And this is the Dutch solution provider Kessler working with FrieslandCampina on some of their milk products sold in Singapore. Who else is working on it? Well, all these people. The poster children for this are P&G and Woolworths. So Procter & Gamble, they are starting to put GS1 Digital Link URIs in a data matrix, not a QR code, a data matrix on some of their products, I think starting with Oral-B. They are always looking for partners to work with this and do some proofs of concept. If that interests you, let us know. Woolworths, of course, the big retailer in Australia, they are working on a proof of concept to try this at point of sale. Lots of solution providers around the world working with Digital Link. The local one there for Ireland is IFS. I think Dan's here, so hi, Dan. And the question marks there, those are the companies I can't tell you about, simply because I don't have their permission to use their name. But those three question marks represent some extremely large, well-known household brands and other companies working behind them. So there's a lot of them in the healthcare industry. But look at some of the industries looking at GS1 Digital Link and how it can help different things. Healthcare is a big one. The primary use case that's driving that is, as you know, if you have any pharmaceutical product inside the pack, there is a leaflet which must be there. It has to contain certain things. In Europe alone, they print 6 billion of those leaflets every year. It would take, if you had a printer spitting out 2 leaflets per second, it would take a century to print out the leaflets for Europe alone for a year. It's a vast number, and they want to get rid of those paper leaflets if they possibly can. So that's clearly a big use case. Transport and logistics, we're using it to identify and to resolve to information about berths and distribution centers and railway wagons and returnable assets and that kind of thing. And Ireland, with IFS and other partners around the world, very much in the forefront of using GS1 Digital Link in the construction industry. It's not just the purchase of an item, it's the when was it installed, who installed it, when was it last maintained, how can I get spare parts for it, and so on. So lots of information all flowing around physical things, and GS1 Digital Link helps you get from that thing to that information. So just to summarize then, in the near future, we're talking about a single-digit number of years here. We foresee every product being a self-describing. You haven't got to use Google or Bing to find information about it. You haven't got to ask someone else. It itself leads you to that information. It means that the product, the item, is itself a media channel, and it's its own source of information, because you, the brand owner, you, the retailer, point to that information that you want to give. And of course, every time someone scans your thing, they are telling you information about themselves. That's giving you marketing intelligence information. Where was it scanned? When was it scanned? You may know who scanned it. You will know potentially. We don't do this out of the box, but there's potential for, more people are scanning my product in this kind of store as opposed to that kind of store. All that kind of information could be there. Oh, I see they bought it at this time of day, and then they scanned it in the evening. That could be useful information to you. And that one barcode can do all that. It can do lots of different things and go beep at the checkout. So that's me. The YouTube link there is to the video that goes through all the different layers, which I hope will be useful to you. I will put the link to these slides in the chat. I'm not sure if that's on there on the version you've got there. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. I believe we shared that link with the output from the last call, but we can share it again, certainly in a follow-up email from this call as well, because I think it'll be fresher in people's minds. And I didn't really do the digital link the justice that you did it, especially when you're saying it takes a century to print a leaflet. That's quite a figure to throw out there, but it also shows, look, there's a need for a digital link there to cut out the paperwork, out of processes and environmental aspects and whatnot that are coming up to the top of people's awareness and consciousness as well. That was really, really interesting, Phil. Any questions, guys? It's something, I suppose, that it is coming down the line, and it does create consumer engagement. Was something that our, I suppose, the retailers and also the manufacturers, brand owners did flag as something that was of importance. And the digital link is very much, it's everything wrapped into one. It's your intelligent barcode, but it also provides that consumer engagement part. So any questions while Phil is on the line, guys, or if there are questions that pop up afterwards, do ask, but you can unmute yourself or you can pop them in the chat box if you want there. We'll just give a few seconds. I'm not seeing anything coming in, Phil, so it seems you may have answered all of the questions.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Perfect. Thanks, Phil, and really informative. And if there is something that comes in, we'll open up that conversation offline, but really appreciate it. Okay, guys, so what we'll do is we'll move on to the next topic then, which is considerations for stakeholders when implementing intelligent barcodes. So let's look at them kind of in action. You know, what happens if you want to implement the two-dimensional data matrix with the traditional GS1 syntax for information, or should you want to implement, we'll say, a more advanced, the likes of the digital link? What are the considerations? It's the same data, it's just a different way of interpreting or writing the information, but it's the exact same information. So it has to come down through the systems and it has to be absorbed back up through the same systems again. There's a number of drivers that push the need for more granular data and a higher capacity barcode and more compact symbology sizes as well. There's a lot of drivers around those. Just need to check one thing here, guys. Apologies. Just turn on my video as well. Many of these drivers will impact the intelligent barcode implementation considerations. So how much data do you need? What symbology are you using? And that'll be for suppliers and retailers alike. And as more complex data is required, the more complex the system that is required to interpret and manage it. I'll leave those drivers up there. We'll share these slides as well, but it's pretty much what we covered at the start of the call, the interests from all of the various stakeholders. There is a lot of crossover, and sharing information, making more information available at a scan is the point of it, not having to link to other systems to pull information, even descriptions and things like that. Digital link does help with that as well. So if we were to look at retailer implementation considerations, it's worth noting that I've covered here retailers and suppliers, but a lot of the solution providers side of things, or indeed other industries outside of the retail industry, will have very similar considerations when implementing intelligent barcodes. So there's pre-implementation decisions. So you need to establish what data is actually required, and you can work with GS1, your suppliers, your solution providers, to develop a rollout plan in terms of what data, what symbology, what technologies are needed, where is industry at the moment in terms of being able to print, interpret this information. Decide what barcodes will be supported. So as a retailer, you'll be the one scanning the information. Your systems will be the systems that will be interpreting the barcodes and pulling the information out. So you'll be dictating what types of barcodes can be scanned, because it'll be limited by your technologies basically. But if it's optical scanners that you have in place, and a lot of retailers are currently upgrading their scanning technology, then you would be able to scan two-dimensional barcodes, the likes of GS1 data matrix, or as Phil showed there as well, even QR codes with that digital link syntax. And as he said, one of the actual hardware providers for scanners, they could actually update their systems to actually interpret the digital link within half an hour. So that shows you that the capabilities are there, but the drive and the need has to be there from, I suppose, all stakeholders to implement this. Decide on number management as well. As a retailer, should branded variable weight barcodes, you'll see an example of one of them there at the top right of the screen, where the price is embedded in an EAN code, but it's not actually telling you anything about the product. It just tells you the price. Should those be replaced and migrated to GTINs plus the price, or GTINs plus the weight, so that you can have the product information being pulled at the same time as that scan, or even lot information encoded in there as well for recall traceability. So those are kind of pre-implementation decisions. Then for a retailer, in terms of the point of sale equipment, you need to be able to enable your equipment to read and decode intelligent barcodes. As Phil said, it took about half an hour for a scanner solution provider to actually upgrade their systems to do this. A lot of the time in scanning, in an actual scanner, there's firmware in there that you actually have to activate. It can already be set up to scan intelligent barcodes, but you have to physically go around and activate each scanner. Especially for the newer types, they would have these standards built into them. Or you may need to upgrade your scanners. If you're off laser-based scanners and working off laser-based scanners at the moment, you may need to upgrade to optical scanners to improve your capabilities. That's the equipment. Then there's the system behind the point of sale, and the system, it needs to use GS1 data standards and GS1 application identifiers. It'll be dealing with more information than just the GTIN. So there's a consideration there of, well, if it's scanning more information, what's it doing with that information? Where is it storing it? How's it managing that? How's it sharing that? Especially if that information was never managed in the system before. So there's a bit of thinking and logic around that. System integration for the desired use cases as well. So what do you want to do? What is the data that you want to manage? And that would be going back to your pre-implementation decisions. What data is important to you? How will it be managed? And then in the point of sale system, well, here's the data sets that you'll have. It might be lot numbers, expiry dates, and GTINs. So how do we manage lot numbers and expiry dates? How do we manage master data for GTINs? And back-end systems and other support systems as well. How do we send that information? Do our internal APIs need to be updated to handle this information as well? In terms of rollout then, so allow time for the point of sale systems, testing and integration. And that's the scanning of the new symbols to make sure all of that works. And that might even be just scanning the GTIN at the start while the product is coming in, so that you can just keep the same systems and setup that you have currently, but just move over to an intelligent barcode symbol first, and then start working on your backend systems once you know it can scan. Depends on the retailer, depends on the project, and these are all things that can be talked through in a project plan. But the backend systems will require more time to achieve that full flow through of the additional data then as well. Because the systems aren't used to dealing with it. So there might be bugs built in changes or updates that are made to them. People is a massive one, and that's something that's coming back from a lot of the implementations across the globe as well. Education and training are key. So all staff should be trained on the new point of sale system procedures, the GS1 standards involved, and problem solving, as well as an education on the actual symbols. So under the GS1 standards, the symbols, the application identifiers and whatnot that are there. And all suppliers should be trained on the GS1 application identifiers. So how are they to be implemented correctly? How do you fault find? Because there are a lot of learnings here in terms of the data that will be coming from suppliers. Sometimes it can be encoded incorrectly in the first few attempts, and it's important that the retailer can identify these and give feedback quickly rather than letting it sit as well. But that's in terms of a retailer implementation considerations. At a high level, but we're open to drill down into those more or talk on an individual level as well, should that be required. And then in terms of supplier manufacturer implementation considerations, a lot of the same format for the retailers will apply. You'll have to look at what's required to develop a rollout plan, sit your team together and whatnot, and then work through various steps of implementation. But in terms of a supplier, the first thing is to ask, which barcode will I use? Are there options for the barcodes that I can use? And the considerations then would be, well, if it's the likes of a GS1 data bar, which is a one-dimensional, kind of a larger barcode, or it can be larger, can my printers scan that? Or can my printer scan a two-dimensional barcode? More than likely, they will be able to scan a data bar, but they may not be able to scan a two-dimensional barcode because it's more complex and requires a more intricate printing setup. Or your printer may be able to do that, but that's a conversation that you need to have with your solution providers or your printer providers to say, okay, can this scan this way? And we can help with that as well. GS1 can help. If you get in contact with us, we can talk you through what needs to be done. But you need to select which barcode, different barcodes, different sizes. So if a size is a consideration and you have marketing on your pack, or you want to increase your label size for the free text, then a smaller barcode symbol will be more important. Data and label format then, so you need to establish what data is actually required. So is it lot numbers, is it expiry dates? Do you need to serialize your product? There's extra considerations for that in managing the serial numbers. But in terms of lot and expiry dates, normally you will have those on your system somewhere, so you'll be able to pull those, but you need to be able to link that data in terms of the software. Multiple barcodes then. Multiple barcodes, are they required, or can it all be tied into one barcode? So point of sale would have an EAN barcode. Traceability information can sometimes be stored separately, and even internal quality assurance barcodes, we can see those on product as well. So take the likes of a tub of butter, you might have little barcodes on there that don't really make much sense to you as a consumer or to many people, but they're actually used in the production line to match the lid with the tub to make sure it's all correct, and it's just a simple scanning process that's automated. But all of that could be knocked into one barcode and free up a lot of space and kind of tidy up the look of products packaging without having 3 or 4 different barcodes on it. As Phil was saying, you know, there's ways of simplifying that down, and Digital Link is one of those. Hardware and software, will the existing setup do? Can it manage the data? Can it print the data? Or will new solutions be required to handle the extra data or more advanced 2D barcodes, printing requirements, as we said earlier? People, again, training and upskilling will be required to be able to print the information, also to be able to identify if there's issues or anything like that happening. And then the process for all stakeholders, so it is very much create a rollout plan. Can your business manage the change, or will it need help? And GS1, our solution providers, are there as well to help. Make sure all stakeholders understand what needs to be done, so determine roles, responsibilities internally. Training is key to the success, so make sure everyone is up to a good level of knowledge on the topic, and that will help with the rollout. Engage with GS1 as well, just as we're happy to help in these terms, because this is where we want to see industry going so that it can help industry. Implementation then, so work with the store or with the production line managers within the actual manufacturers to implement the new barcodes on labels. So that can be a process. It can be a rollout over a couple of months. It can take years in some cases as well, because of different categories being rolled out at certain stages. So the earlier you start thinking about this now, the more ground that you'll break as you move forward. Get your barcodes verified as well. So do your symbols meet the quality standard required? Will they scan at the retailers? Will they scan even for your own quality assurance practices? If they won't, then you'll need to actually get them verified and make the improvements then as per what's advised through that verification report. That's to make sure it scans, it's not blurry, the data is encoded correctly, and many more technical features to that as well. Are there any questions from any of that, folks? That's the last topic for the day. So if there are any questions there, I'm just going to find my chat box. I'm not seeing anything coming in. So if there are questions after this call, guys, we'll send out a follow-up email with the slides and with a link to Phil's video as well. What's next after this? So I suppose these are the initial 2 calls. This was to see, first to gauge the interest from industry. There has been some interest come back in terms of projects that we might be looking at for implementations. So hopefully we'll be able to talk about those in the next calls. We'll make contact with anyone who's expressed an interest, and we'll open up those avenues. And the next call then, what we'll aim for is after the summer break, we'll have a catch-up call as well then in terms of the Intelligent Barcodes working group. What's been happening? Do we have updates on any implementations that are happening, and any other topics that are there to be discussed? Basically, if you can reach out to us and let us know what you'd like to discuss. But other than that, thanks for attending the call. Thanks to Phil Archer again for his wonderful presentation, very informative, and I hope it opened a few questions for yourselves as well. But I'll close it out now, guys, and thanks to everyone for attending, and have a good summer, and we'll see you in the fall.